I don't know, you or I said it when we first discussed maybe bringing this up as a topic, that, sales is in many instances almost a dirty word.
All right, we are talking this week about sales professional or clerk. Does that sound like a good title, Peter?
It sounds scary. Doesn't it sound scary?
Sales professional.
Clerk. It's such a hard sound.
I'm Jimmy DeGroot with Train Retail.
And I'm Peter Smith with the Retailsmiths.
Yeah, and Boston College.
Boston College, go Eagles.
Cura Personalis, right?
By the way, that you mentioned Clerk, and that always reminds me of the Clerk, who was the certificate God. I think he was the certificate. Was he the certificate president? I think. I think he might have been. I think he might have been the Clerk. Was it the club? We'll have to look it up.
I'm gonna have to Google that one.
Anyway, Jimmy,
so do you know what Cura Personalis means?
It sounds like it should be curious personality, but I don't know that that's true.
Well, that is your Boston College mantra from the Jesuits.
Isn't that great? And it shows you what stuck.
It had something to do with the whole person. Improve the whole person.
I'm working on it, Jimmy.
Like all right, good. Sounds good. Ah, beautiful. Well, I love this subject today because I tend to think that we shy away from meeting head on that we need sales professionals in our stores.
Yeah.
And we shy away from it by putting ads out there saying that we're looking for a marketing manager, right? I was just on LinkedIn Jobs. Marketing, you're going to laugh at this. Marketing manager, sales lead. It says everything, and people are looking for everything but sales professionals.
How about client advisor?
Advisor.
I'd like to advise you to go to our competition because
brand advocate.
God almighty.
I'd like to advise you to be in front of clients and sell them products.
Yeah, it's funny. The timing of this is funny because it's not a funny topic. I'm about ready to get on a plane and go to Dallas to do a couple of keynotes over the weekend. One of them I'm doing, which we maybe should think about for a future podcast, which would be the future of retailing. What do we actually see? What's going on in retailing in general? But the other one I'm doing is hiring salespeople. And I know that was episode 1 for us. We did hiring salespeople, but so much of what I'll be talking about is exactly what we're talking about now. This idea of, and I know you're quite deliberate when you talk about it, and I'm, try to be very deliberate when I talk about it as well, and that is sales professional, right? Mm-hmm. Sales professional. I don't know, you or I said it when we first discussed maybe bringing this up as a topic, that, sales is in many instances almost a dirty word. All right?
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
It's like, God almighty, don't mention salesperson. People might think we want to sell.
Pushy and aggressive. Pushy and aggressive.
God, don't bring that pushiness on top of me, fella. And I think
that was the old way of sales, though, right? What do I got to do to get you into this car today?
I had a guy. I told you that I worked for what became Whitehall Jewelers in Chicago way back when, and I say it became it because the company was called Liebolt, and it was on State Street in Chicago. And there was a fellow there who has long since departed the scene. And when he would quote price for people, he would quote the price and then he would slap the counter and say, plus tax. In other words, if you had not been sufficiently put off by whatever the price was that he had quoted, he was going to remind you that you also had to pay the tax too. So God rest his soul. He was an interesting cat. Didn't sell very much, but gave me some funny stories to tell along the way.
Well, one of the questions I would ask when I go into a store is I would sit down with every one of the people working there, and I would just say, hey, tell me about yourself. Tell me what you do. Tell me what your job description is.
Right.
And I think you and I might have talked about this before, but people are so quick to say, I'm in charge of inventorying stuff. I'm in charge of putting stuff out, merchandising. I'm in charge of marketing. I do operations, repair checking, but nobody said sales.
Yeah.
In fact, I can't remember once when somebody said, I'm in charge of sales.
Right.
And so kind of back to your original thought, why are we so embarrassed? Why do we shy away from that? Maybe is it because people have a perception of retail sales in their mind and they don't want to go work for a retail store?
Yeah, I mean, the answer is we don't know, right? Because it's different for different businesses and it's different for different people. Whether they're nominally salespeople or not. But look, I want to be clear about this, and I know you and I share this view. When we talk about the expectation of salespeople becoming proficient in actually selling, right, in inspiring and influencing consumer behavior, we don't do that in lieu of the other good qualities, right? So we're not saying be an ass as opposed to being nice. We're not saying don't know anything about the product as opposed to getting the appropriate amount of product information. We're not saying be a bad citizen in the store. We're saying all of those things matter, but they don't really matter if you don't sell stuff. Because at the end,
nothing matters.
Right, because at the end of the day, that's why we're here. They're not museums. They're not playhouses. We expect commerce to be conducted. And so I think that this sort of catch-all, this euphemism, which is what you were sort of getting at in terms of why are we so reluctant to call ourselves salespeople?
I'll give you a little lay of the land for where I was at back in before 2000, 1998, 1999. What had happened at our store is we had reached a really kind of a good, comfortable level in sales. Okay, we were doing $1 million in 1997, 1998. Okay, so we were paying the bills and life was just fine. All of a sudden, people started noticing in our market that there was some market share to be had. So competition moved in, and now these people were focused on selling, and they were focused on selling, and people didn't think they were bad people. They didn't think they were pushy and aggressive. So we had this really kind of, shucks, kind of, take a look at it and come back when you're in the mood to buy it. And, I'll give you my card, that type of thing. So that was the approach. And I find, number one, that I think a lot of stores are largely that today. Number two,
largely what today? They're largely let's
largely
back off.
this very conservative. We're not going to focus on sales. We're not going to focus on being pushy and aggressive is the word that a lot of people will come to.
Right.
And you know what? We hired a couple sales trainers into our store, and we started learning how to sell effectively and give people what they wanted. They wanted to buy the products in our store. As soon as we got rid of the shucks attitude, we started paying people based upon their performance. Now, I'm not saying commission, but what we did is we rewarded them based on their performance. And then we worked really hard at keeping our corporate culture one of respect and love and one of caring for each other so that there wasn't salesperson against salesperson. Like I said, I'm kind of giving away the whole farm here.
No, but I think what you're saying is really, really important, because we're saying that having respect for the culture, having respect for the clients, having respect for your colleagues, your managers, etc., is in no way, shape, or form mutually exclusive to selling.
Absolutely.
Right? And
absolutely.
people like to make it that way because it becomes almost a cop-out for those who don't want to sell, but it is simply not the case that if you're effective, again, in what I'll often refer to as influencing customer behavior, consumer behavior, that you necessarily have to be an ass. Yes, you have to be assertive. Yes, you have to understand why you're there, what the whole purpose of your role is, but that doesn't mean that you have to be pushy and make the customers uncomfortable. I just simply don't subscribe to that.
You know, and what we did, I will tell you, we had to go through a growth period because as soon as we moved into this performance-based pay, it was hourly plus profit sharing was what it was. But as soon as we moved into that, we had to scramble to make sure everybody was kumbaya, and that took a couple months actually to happen. But I'll tell you what, our sales went through the roof. They doubled. They doubled, and we had exponential growth. This podcast is brought to you by Train Retail. Now it's fall, and Train Retail has several options for training your new people or your existing veterans. From 10-minute weekly sales and operations training for your sales team, sales management master classes for your managers, new jewelry associate basic training for your new people, right? It's fall. We're going to be hiring a lot of new people now. And now we're having the owner's masterclass. Oh, and also there's one-on-one management training as well. So all kinds of options for you. The list is growing, and you can see it all at trainretail.com. Sign up for the weekly sales training videos for as little as $99 a month. And you can choose any time from our over 600 videos. Yeah, that's a lot. And if there's a subject you need training on, we've got it. Or we'll make it for you. Oh, and when you sign up for that weekly training, use coupon code FREEMONTH for your first month free. You can cancel anytime. So try it out. Train yourself. Train your manager. Train your team at trainretail.com. What I'm seeing, and I've seen in a few stores teaching our management masterclass, I've seen in a few stores where I've gotten to this $3 million level, and I kind of did it without trying. I did it by hanging my shingle out there, right, and saying open for business and treating people well, and don't really set performance standards and metrics for people. We just pay them a good salary, and life is good. So if I'm gonna get beyond my current glass ceiling, which is the reason people call you and I a lot, I hit that glass ceiling, right? If I'm gonna get beyond that, I'm going to have to start doing some of these things that you're talking about, and I'm very afraid to do that because you're going to shake up my model, and I might lose everything I got.
Right.
I mean, have you seen stores in that type of position that have moved beyond that?
Well, what's interesting, I think, is because we're seeing a little bit more headwinds now, far less, I think, than we might have expected.
Right.
I saw the numbers for August come out since our last podcast that showed less than 3% down in August, and it was less than 3% through July. So those numbers are absolutely fantastic. But nonetheless, there are some headwinds beginning to emerge a little bit, and I think that that's when people start to worry a little bit that maybe they haven't got all this stuff figured out, right? That maybe what's happened over the last couple of years is not destined to continue simply because, to use your parlance, you hung the shingle out. Look, what I will say is this, and I want to get your perspective on this. My view is, and challenge it if you feel differently, is if you're a manager, or if your manager spends most of their time in an office, you're going to get that behavior modeled. The message you're sending to your team is, my job as a manager is to do paperwork, is to make schedules, is to cross T's and dot I's. What I'm not doing is being a coach on the sales floor, finding people doing good stuff and letting them know that I witnessed that. By the way, whether they made the sale or not. Hey, I know that didn't result in a sale, but I loved the way you did this, or I loved the way you did that. And then obviously when things don't go well, talk to me about why you made the decision not to involve one of your colleagues in that, or why you made the decision not to involve me in that situation. That kind of coaching, that kind of blocking and tackling, of sales that we in some respects take for granted, but doesn't really happen. So give me your perspective on that. That manager in the office. The first question after he's hired, where do I sit?
The thing about what you just brought up is you brought up a box of worms. No, you brought up a worm store is what you just did. Do I agree that sales managers need to be on the floor 80% of the time? Absolutely, without a doubt. In fact, some of the best managers I know don't even have an office, but they have a manager's circle within the store. So that's obvious. But in order to get there, we need to have a little paradigm shift. I've been wanting to use that word so often.
Well done. Yeah. Congratulations.
But our paradigm shift is this. We start our store. Tom and Linda.
They've been using that in Boston for 20 years. So if that's just getting to Wisconsin.
It's not a buzzword anymore.
It's not. Yeah, no.
But Tom and Linda start their store. And Tom's a goldsmith. He works at the bench. And Linda, the kids are off to school right now. And so Linda says, I'll help you out at the store. So we get a case and we order some jewelry from Stuller. And in that case, we put in some stuff we bought over the counter. And we're a jewelry store now, right? And so that's the model is there. And that's typically kind of the model of how a store would start. And then we go out and we sponsor a little league team, or we go to church, or we go to something and we, sponsor something for the Lions Club or things. And we build these relationships. And then we hire a couple people in the store to help us out. Well, that help us out is in quotes, right? And so they're not salespeople because Tom and Linda are really the salespeople. They started the store, but these people help us out and they support us in their customer service. Okay, now Linda's really busy. Tom's at the bench 100% of the time. We need somebody to manage this store because now we're doing $500,000, $1 million in volume. We need somebody to manage the store. Well, who do we turn into our manager? Probably the person that showed up first, probably the one person that's full-time, probably the person that sells the most because we think they'd be a good manager. So they become the manager and their duties are make out the schedule, show up first, turn the key in the door, open up the safes. That's the manager job. You can tell by how fast I'm talking how well I know this subject. But then, okay, so at some point I'm talking with a store right now that's doing $8 million in volume, and they don't have a management plan. And God bless them, you get to that point, that's wonderful, but you've hit the glass ceiling, and that's probably as far as you're going to go without a management plan. So anyway, long story short on that, at some point, you need to become a manager, exactly like you just said. You got to get out of your office if you have one. Probably the biggest death threat to a manager is a comfortable office. Get out on that sales floor, spend 80% of your time on that floor, coaching, working with your people, supporting them in every single way. In so many stores right now that I train in, and I'll shut up here, is I'm the manager, but I have a sales goal. And I'm selling against the people that I'm trying to support. And I just find that is just a struggle. That's a struggle to get past that.
Right, because you're necessarily putting them in competition with each other, which I'm not sure I totally agree with that. Now, what I will say is this. The manager should be held to store goals. The whole store.
You bet.
And so what you really need to be thinking about as a manager is how do I, meet or exceed the overall goal and make sure in doing that I'm making everybody better. Everybody needs to be better than me. I was reading not too long ago and I made a note to sort of bring it up when we finally got around to this particular subject. This notion that the psychologists have when it comes to what we're really talking about here. And there's a term they have for it, and it's called the law of triviality, right? So that's what the psychologists call it, which is really, it speaks to people's tendencies to focus on trivial stuff, space filler stuff, work at the expense of more important work, right? So, salespeople can busy themselves, doing displays. They can do appraisals. They can take in repairs. They can do all of the stuff that fills time, as they say, that law of triviality, really to avoid engaging customers. And as I'm doing it, I'm thinking, wouldn't it be great? Who was it that once said, retail would be great if it wasn't for all these darn customers? And you get people who actually conduct themselves like that. And so if I'm working on, contacting a vendor because I've been asked to do so about something or other, and a customer comes in, wouldn't it be nice if one of my colleagues took that customer? Right. Because gosh, I don't want to be tied up. And then even when they do engage with customers, in spite of themselves, very, very often, they fill that space with triviality, right? They go, well, let's talk about product. Let's talk about all sorts of stuff. Let's talk about everything except asking you for the sale, about making the sale. So it reminds me of Morton Hansen, and I had the joy of being around him when I did a program at the Harvard B School many, many moons ago, and he talked about being busy is not an accomplishment. Right? Yep. Being busy is not an accomplishment, and yet in many respects, and I think totally true of that law of triviality, those folks who are not really wired to sell want to fill their space and fill their day with everything other than actually selling.
Absolutely. And so what the end is here, in the reality in the end is this: if managers manage, sellers sell, and support people support. The sooner we can get to that, and you're going to have exponentially improved performance in all regards. As a manager, I did not have a sales goal. I was paid based upon the success of the team. What did that make me focus on 100% of the time? Success of the team. Right. And so I supported them. I trained them. I coached them in every single way. I gave them the tools. That's where I was. Then, and we eventually got to this point too, is that support people came. They opened up the store. They put the jewelry out in the cases. They wiped the cases off. Salespeople came in half an hour before the store. We had a team huddle. We're talking about the goals for the day, that type of thing. But then they're immediately, in their non-selling time, salespeople were focused on outreach and clienteling. They were focused on getting people in the door. So you have, again, like I said, the word, it's exponential. Everybody's behavior just went through the roof. It's great.
Hey, this is Peter Smith. To the suppliers listening, when was the last time you got a perspective on your business from someone who's walked the walk for 4 decades? If you're looking to establish or expand your footprint in the U.S. market, let's talk. To the retailers, as an author of Hiring Squirrels, Sell Something, The Sales Minute, and as a columnist for National Jeweler and The Jewelry Book, do you think your team might benefit from my sales masterclass and one-on-one time with me in your store? If you're a multiple door retailer, let's put some regional sessions together. You can reach me at theretailsmiths@gmail.com or on LinkedIn. Look forward to hearing from you and hope you love the podcast. What do you say, Jimmy, when managers and owners, as they are apt to do, especially in the last couple of years, say, well, it's all well and good talking to me about hiring people, with a sales wiring. It's all well and good talking to me about I should have a higher bar to entry. I should have a more stringent litmus test before I bring people in. But I'm just struggling to get some warm bodies in this place.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what do you say to them?
Well, first of all, you may have star salespeople right within your organization already. And I started seeing that as soon as our pay went to reward-based pay or performance-based pay. But also there were people that I had done, we'd done this little personality test called the flag page, and we found out that there were people in our stores that loved being in front of people. And those are obviously people that are going to excel. And then we loved people, or the people that loved supporting. And for those people, I said, hey, you're the support people. So
Yep.
Right with the existing staff that we have right now, we could probably start there. And I think one of the saddest things that you and I have heard throughout the years is somebody was, just underwhelmed with their pay and their motivation at a particular store, and they went to move to another store, and they're the top salesperson, because they didn't bring it out of them. So what do we have existing to work with right now? And then what kind of message are we sending out there in our recruiting? Either from our existing salespeople, getting their friends in, talking about sales, and the money that can be made in a performance-based reward system. And so that's them, their friends. What kind of message are we putting out there? Are we looking for a consultant, or are we looking for a sales professional that loves people?
I might even go back to the womb a little bit on this one and say it starts with the manager and or the owner being really, really clear, both internally and also in the recruitment efforts. This is what matters to us.
This is what we're looking for. Yep.
If you're a salesperson, you're expected to sell. And if that feels like a foreign concept to you, this might not be a great fit. And I think clearly we would say you start with your existing team. Mm-hmm. Because I think that it isn't their fault if there's ambiguity about what their role is. In that world, they're going to go and fix a display. They're going to go and check in merchandise. They're going to go and follow up with repair customers and so on and so forth. Yep. And we accept that there's, on some level, and especially so in smaller environments, that's a sort of everybody pitch in and do it. Perhaps as you get bigger and you get into the higher volumes,
then you start
you would hope that they have
separate.
You hope that they've got people hired to block on the team. You're not expected to be the quarterback and the center and the wide receiver and so on and so forth. But it does start with that clarity of communication, right?
Absolutely.
This is a sales organization. It seems almost humorous and so bloody obvious to say it. And yet I can tell you in the course of my career, including very recently, you've had the head of the company say, we're not a sales organization. Well, what the hell do you mean we're not a sales organization? And of course, in that person's case, it was true because that person made it so, right?
Right.
As opposed to saying, let's have no ambiguity about the fact that we exist for the purpose of generating healthy and profitable commerce. And in the implicit in that is that the customer wants to be inspired to make a purchase.
Sure.
This idea that people have, even if it's not articulated, if it's just something that sort of informs their behavior, that somehow it's not a good thing for the customer if I'm asking them to part with money. That starts with the top. That starts at the very top. Managers and owners saying, this is why we're here. This is what the expectations are. Now let's figure out what you need to do to be successful. Right? I mean, do you want to be a quarterback, or do you want to be a wide receiver, or do you want to be the center? Where do you want to play? Let's make sure that and this is the whole, you mentioned Jim Collins in one of our previous podcasts, who wrote Good to Great. Get the right people on the bus, and we can figure out what to do with them. Yep. And so maybe maybe your high bar is not to be a superstar salesperson, but you can be a very effective one, and we can also have you do X, Y, and Z.
Absolutely.
This person is dynamite in sales. Why the heck would I have them doing displays?
Right.
Why the heck would I have them sitting in the back following up with repair customers? Because And it happens because of the ambiguity and because of the lack of clarity from the people at the top of the organizations.
Right. I've seen people who are fantastic salespeople, and I talk to them, for example, about my training. My training is once a week, 10 minutes via video, and they say, they'll say a couple things regarding that, and they'll say, number one, I really don't need a lot of training. I'm really good with people. I'm great. I'm fantastic, and see you down the road. Thanks. And then there's folks who are very good at selling, but say, I didn't know about that, what you just taught. And
Right.
I'll give you a quick example. I teach this program on speak their language, and the whole thing is you don't talk to a fun person the way you would talk to a highly detailed person. For example, if you or I walk into a store, we are not interested in the specific gravity of a diamond. You and I are going to go into a store. We want to surprise our wives. We want to delight them. We want the reaction. We want it, and we're going to write the check or give them a credit card, and we're out the door. Don't give us that spiel. And so my focus on a lot of this is talk to people the way they need to be talked to. Otherwise, you're going to lose them. They're going to go out the door. Long story short on that is. There are people that always want to be getting better. And like you had just said, there are people that sell just fine. And what if we can just up them 2% or 5% in their closing ratio or average ticket, that type of thing. So that's a lot of fun. Why did I get on that? I don't know. There was a reason I got on that.
I want to jump in on that last point that you just made, because I think one of the interesting dilemmas in what we do, right? We do it at different levels. You're doing the weekly 10-minute touch bases. I'm going into the stores and doing the sales master classes. Is can we teach sales wiring, right?
Yes.
And I think that what you were just sort of touching on and what I think bears expanding upon a little bit is if you have a team of 4 or 5 people, you're going to historically have one of them be the top performer, and they're going to be the top performer, month in and month out. They may have an off month here or there for whatever reason. And you're going to have some people who are not that good, and they're not that good month in and month out.
But Peter, they're good people. We don't want to lose them.
And look, that stuff matters too. And so I think what we believe that you can raise the bar for all of them, but you're still going to have that delta between your top performers and your lowest level performers, right? I want the lowest level performers to be better lowest level performers, right? I want the best performers to, and I think I may have spoken about this in a previous one, and stop me if I did, but when I first started teaching sessions at Hearts and Fire University, and you'd be in these big rooms and you'd have a couple of 100 people there, or maybe even in the bigger room and you'd have 1,000 people there. I used to be freaked out by the fact that so many of the top salespeople, the folks that I knew were really outstanding performers, were sitting in the front row. And I remember the first time or two I started to teach them stuff there, I thought, what the heck could they possibly learn from me? Right? Why are they sitting in the front row?
Yeah, they should be up here.
And then you realize that they were not there to learn everything I had to say. They were there to learn something.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
They wanted some little nugget or some little gem or some little pearl, no apologies for the puns, that they could take back to their already successful world and say, I'm now going to get, and they are the most funny, even now with the sales master classes, I have some communications from a couple of people who were the stars in their stores and said, this has made a difference to how, and they would name 1 or 2 things that in particular, but despite my success, I had never really thought about it like that. Now it's going to make me that much better again. So the other thing I'd say is this, that you touched on the idea that some folks may not even know that they're great salespeople, or they may not even know that they have the potential to be great salespeople. And we can only guess, not knowing individuals specifically, right? We try to get to know them when we can.
Sure.
What might be holding them back. In some cases, I suspect it's because, I haven't been around for 10 years and I'm not a GG, or I don't have near the level of experience that person has, therefore I can't. And what I would say, and with a hammer in my hand, is stop with the rationalizations for why you cannot be. The best vehicle for you to be a great salesperson is emotional engagement, right? Is to find a way to emotionally engage with that customer. Because if you can do that, be damned all the other stuff, the number of years you've been working there, what you do or don't know about product. If you can find a way to emotionally engage people, that's the best vehicle for being successful in sales. And that can come from anybody.
It can. First of all, I just want to mention a gentleman named Terry Sisko, who has an amazing tool to kind of filter and where you can see initially as somebody applies, are they wired for sales? It's very effective and a very good percentage of success on that. The other thing is, when I'm looking for a candidate, I want somebody who can carry on a conversation, look me in the eye, it be interesting to talk with, and I just said it in my latest training. If ever you get stuck in a sale, it's probably because you're focused on this, and you're focused on this product in front of you and all the features and benefits of it, and blah blah blah, and all the things the manufacturer told you. You're not focused on the person. And so whenever you get stuck in sales, my advice is get your eyes off the product, get your eyes on the person, ask them questions, get involved with them. And if you can carry on a conversation and you truly care and have empathy, as you say, I think you're going to be an amazing salesperson. And you're going to feel great about it. You're not going to feel like you're pushy and aggressive. You're not going to feel like, cha-ching, I got that sale today. You're going to feel like, man, I helped those people. They're so delighted. I can't wait. I wish I was a fly on the wall when he gives that tour. You know, that's the type of person that I love to have in my stores.
I'm with you. So, you know, I have a quote here from Tim Cook at Apple, which I really love, and he says, "Our whole role in life is to give you something you didn't know you wanted, and then once you get it, you can't imagine your life without it." Right? I mean, is that a great quote?
It is awesome. It is awesome.
So, Jimmy, we probably should wrap this thing up. Any sort of parting words of wisdom on this topic that you want to...
Well, back to what you said kind of initially was a lot of times we get caught up in the whirlwind of business because business is good enough. And one of the first questions I'll ask somebody when trying to help them is, where's your pain? What is your pain? Do you have pain? And then rate your pain, as comedian Brian Regan says, rate your pain. But not only that, tell me specifically what's going on and how and why we have this. And here's the reality. If you don't have pain, and we haven't had pain for the last couple of years, sales have been pretty darn good. And if things are good enough, there's not going to be any change in your organization because it's got to come from you. And if you're feeling that pain and you're desperate, for lack of a better word, but you have a high inclination to want to change that pain, you're going to make changes. And my advice, I'm sorry. A lot of times you talk a lot in these podcasts. A lot of times I talk. I'm doing most of the talking.
That's what podcasts are, Jimmy. People talk.
I know, but I'm looking at my waveforms here, and I'm like, I could see where I spoke and then where you spoke. It's a little tiny. But anyway, the thing is, define what you want. Period. Just define what you want. And if you can't do that, say, well, where do I want to be 5 years from now? Or what's my out? What do I want to have to be able to sell to somebody someday? Maybe my employees. And then once you define that, you can say, are we going to get there doing what we're doing right now, or do we need to make some changes?
Yeah.
And one of the biggest changes I can recommend is have salespeople sell, have your manager manage. Don't give them a sales goal, but you have to be comfortable with that. And then you as an owner have a great vision for the company.
Right. All good advice, and as Jimmy often says, I'm writing it down. I'll say sort of three things. Number one is clearly communicate why they are there. All right. Whether that's the owner, the manager, but there should be no ambiguity about what the role of a sales professional is. Number two is tell them that you're there to help them be successful and be there. right? Whether, again, you're the manager or the owner or a supervisor, whomever you are, let them know that you will be a resource to help them be successful. And then the third thing, very self-servingly for you and for I, would be invest in their continued learning.
Yes.
Invest in their continued learning. This idea that they are fully formed, nothing to learn folks when they show up, or if they've been there for 10 years, give them a different voice to listen to that might, as I talked about with those folks sitting in the front row, walk away with a couple of pearls of wisdom or some real nuggets that can make a difference in their day.
Absolutely. And I'm going to add one more thing to that, is that set up goals and rewards that the whole team can enjoy. Obviously, we've got our stars. What can we do to support our stars so that we hit our goal? And a quick story on that, just real quick on this. When I came in, the first day I started at Avenue Jewelers in Appleton, Sandy was gone that week, and Karen was going to be gone the next week, and Catherine was going to be gone the following week. I'm like, where are these people going? Well, we hit a sales goal, and for that, everybody gets a trip. And a lot of them were going to Hawaii. And I thought, well, that is beautiful motivation. Anyway, I asked the guys, I said, well, what do we get when we hit the next goal, which was basically double? And they said, well, I suppose we'll all go to Hawaii again. You know what we did? We doubled. We doubled the next year. We doubled the next year.
Look, I think that
have team,
maybe at
something
some
the whole
point,
team can enjoy.
Yeah, I think it would be an interesting podcast somewhere down the road to talk about goals and compensation, things of that nature. A couple of things I'll throw out, and it's perfect that you brought up Hawaii, is what the psychologists have learned about rewards and incentives is more frequent touches are so effective than, hey, we're at the end of the year, if we get here, we're going to go to Hawaii. Great. Have the Hawaii trip. That would be magnificent.
Yeah.
But have the pizza.
Else. Have the pizza today. Right.
Have movie tickets for close rates, or have a bottle of wine, or whatever it might be, and do it frequently. And if you're looking at monetary goals, instead of having a $30,000 goal, have 6 $5,000 goals where you're touching people on a more regular basis. Again, break that number down into anything you want. So anyway, all good stuff, Jimmy. Good advice.
That's beautiful. That's going to be a great podcast. And you and I just keep going down the rabbit hole. So let's just keep doing this. So
we'll just keep doing it. Yeah.
The Business of Jewelry podcast with Jimmy DeGroot and Peter Smith is produced by me, Jimmy DeGroot, right here in the Train Retail Studios. It's also brought to you by Train Retail, your weekly 10-minute sales training video course with over 500 videos for your team to watch and train every single week. It's also brought to you by the wonderful folks at In-Store Magazine. Go to instoremag.com for more details and subscribe. It's also brought to you by the Retail Smiths. Peter Smith, an amazing consultant for the industry, both for retailers and suppliers. The Retail Smiths. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. We'll see you next time.